Welcome to Caribbean Content Creators. Today we're chatting with Kevin Jared Hosein. Kevin is an award-winning writer from Trinidad. In 2015, he was... Sorry, that was rude of me. Welcome to Caribbean Content Creators. Today we're chatting with Kevin Jared Hosein and Portia. Kevin is an award-winning writer from Trinidad. In 2015, he was the Caribbean regional winner of the Commonwealth Short Story Competition. In 2018, he won the prize with a story named Passage. It's a compelling story written in Creole. To date, he's published 3 books. His first novel, The Repenters, was longlisted for the 2017 OCM Bocas Award. His upcoming novel, Hungry Ghost, is slated for publication as a major lead title in 2023 by Bloomsbury Publishing. Bloomsbury is the... Am I saying that right?
Bloomsbury? Yeah, Bloomsbury.
Yeah. Bloomsbury is the same publishing house that published the Harry Potter books.
Yeah.
Kevin, Portia, it's great to have you all.
When I went... Let me start.
Yeah. No. I enjoy this because I feel like I started off on the wrong foot. I feel like I botched the introduction. So let me backtrack a little bit.
Well, you could say Portia Subran.
Portia Subran.
His wife also a writer.
Yeah, and she's also a writer and artist.
Yeah.
Let me start over this recording. So this is like the behind the scenes, like how to botch.
It's like a common thing because is the amount of takes is how to do and is editing and you know.
And that's the fun thing. You know what? I have a channel called Lyndon, Baptiste. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is keeping things in the very natural state. And I think that's what podcasting allows you to do. So let me backtrack a little bit and leave this recording as is, right? I am sitting here today with Kevin Jared Hosein and his wife, Portia Subran. Portia is also a writer and she's also an artist. And Portia, I wanna welcome you.
Oh, thanks so much for having me here today.
Yeah.
So in more ways than one, Kevin, we sit on different ends of the table. We could talk about a lot of things today, but I want to talk about traditional book publishing because it is my hope that the aspiring writers that are listening to this, they will be able to build a very clear picture of self-publishing in the Caribbean and traditional publishing. And you have gone on to do wonderful things since we first met. You have 3 books published. You have a title coming up that by a major publisher. And you're pretty excited. And I am excited about it too. It's 2023. As a writer, what's keeping you busy?
So with traditional publishing and having an upcoming publication, you would see that they have a whole machine. And that whole machine... They started it chugging and it ramping up right now. It is a bit scary to see it in motion because you would see how linked up everything is. So they would have all their media people. They would commission articles. You would have magazines that would want excerpts from the book, maybe a chapter or half of a chapter or anything like that. So we have to decide, what to put, and everybody wants exclusive content. So you can't have the same thing in multiple places. There's emails every day with interview questions, with somebody want to know some kind of detail about the book. The other day, I had a photo shoot for the Guardian UK. It's basically like that. I don't want to make it seem like that's the life or anything like that because, after the publication, the book is not really your own anymore. It kind of out there in the world. And life might quiet down a little bit. So, but right now, before the publication, it's going to be kind of noisy.
What a top-notch interview I am. Cell phone ringing in my pocket and all kind of thing. I'm seeing evidence of the work that's going on in the background. I think up to this morning, sometime there was an article that came in and your book is listed among the top 10 books to look out for in 2023. Yeah. And that was part of my that is part of my struggle as a self-published writer when you're trying to do all these marketing, and I imagine it takes a lot of the stress off of you of having to do your own marketing, yes, you're doing things in the background, but you have this machine working for you, right? And that's fantastic news. And I all too often I would get emails from people asking about traditional publishing versus the self-publishing aspect. And you're familiar with both of them. And to put things into perspective for listeners, what is the difference between self-publishing and traditional publishing?
Self-publishing is where you have a manuscript and you could it had different routes you could go with it. So like the route I went with you is I gave you the manuscript. We did some editing. We had some illustrations to put in, and you with Potbake dealt with the formatting of the book and the printing and partial distribution. But a lot of it, and even with helping me get some books into schools, because I remember St. Joseph RC, something like that. I think they contacted me through you, and so we had some help there. But like a normal self-publishing, which is really just printing, is where I think you might have to format the book yourself. They will print it and they ship it, so they might not even have that kind of help. Where the formatting, the guttering and the margins might be off, the line spacing might be off. I mean, I was pretty pleased with the product that I got because, well, we worked together on the formatting of the book. So that would be like how self-publishing is. And I remember reading something about you when you say you went to Trin City with house of books in your bag and you're trying to get into the store. And that's why I imagine like what the self-publishing avenue might be. But you also, I mean, you had to link up with booksellers as well and hope that they would find a space on the shelf for it. Traditional publishing, on the other hand, you don't really have to worry about those kind of things. But what you have to worry about is simply writing the book. You would have to probably respond to the editors, see what changes you want to make, what you don't want to make, fight for what you want to change and don't want to change. But in the end, once you submit the final thing, that's pretty much it. They as the machine will take care of the rest of it, but you have to. I mean, you still have to work with them and say you have to be there for the interviews, the podcasts. You have to show up basically for a good few months, and if they want to send you somewhere, like a festival or send it to an event, you have to make time to go because, in that sense, you would be marketing not just the book but also yourself. To get into what I would say traditional publishing with if you said Bloomsbury or Penguin or HarperCollins, you almost always need a literary agent because the literary agent is a proxy that would talk to the editors, that would send them the manuscript, because a lot of the editors from those publishing houses might not take unsolicited manuscripts. You might have indie publishing houses that are still traditional, but like the bigger ones, if it feels like it fits your book well, you would need an agent.
Okay, so we'll come back to the idea of the agent in a bit, and to deal with this aspect of the control that you have, right? I remember with the Repenters. Portia, you did the front cover, the artwork for that. Do you have? I imagine there may have been some kind of desire in terms of Hungry Ghost. Did you also work on the cover for that?
For
The Hungry Ghost, the upcoming publication.
No, because that's a whole different game because I think Bloomsbury had their in-house designer. I can't pronounce his name. So this guy is kind of amazing because he was like illustrator of the year or nominated, I think. And he did the cover design for Alan Moore's new book. And so they have like their professionals, which is amazing for Kevin to be getting that treatment. So I was I was excited with well, Kevin will tell you, but his cover went through some changes. It went through its own journey. But the initial Bloomsbury cover, it was kind of similar to my art style, which is like a black and white ink illustration. And we had really liked that one. But eventually, with the journey the book went through, it had its changes. But I think the illustration is still in the book itself, like inside. So that is cool. And I think with the American version, they did a kind of it feels like a Caribbean book. Like the UK one, like that one, it feels like I don't know, just like a book, just like a literary fiction. But the American cover has a very Caribbean feel. It has the coconut trees and the kind of house and stuff. And I guess with covers, it's just exciting to see how far he's going with it.
Yeah, that's real
Yeah.
exciting. But I mean, I thinking about all the different writers, who are aspiring towards accomplishing these things, and to seeing you doing it along with the other writers. We could probably think about local, whether Michael Anthony, Earl Lovelace, and different ones I can't think about right now. So, congrats again on the journey that you're enjoying together. Tell me a little bit about Wednesday, July the 25th, 2018.
I believe I might have been in Cyprus at the time.
What the experience is like? Because I saw a picture of you in Cyprus. This is for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, and I was reading somewhere that is about like 5,200 entries, and you sitting at a table, I imagine, with the finalists. And share that experience, because I want to live through you the thrill of 2018.
The Commonwealth Short Story Prize was something I used to just enter and not really take it on after. It's just like, I entered this thing about eight, 9 times. And well, in 2015, I would have won for the Caribbean region. But after that, I used to still enter. And then in 2018, you get an email saying that you're shortlisted. You actually get an email much before they actually put out the list. So I was like, hey, that's really nice. A few weeks later, there's like, well, you win for the region, and then again, you would notice before you actually see it being posted up, because you have to do your statements, all those things that to be posted automatically. So when they said they called me on the phone and they said, well, you have to go to Cyprus for the ceremony, but I was like, I never went to the Eastern Hemisphere or anything like that before. So I was like, Cyprus, I had a kind of, I had an idea where it was, but I had to look it up on a map and see like what it was, what the culture was and that kind of thing. So when we went there, we met up with, so how the prize works is that you have winners from 5 regions, and the regions is the Caribbean, Asia, Africa, Europe and Canada, and the Pacific. So all 5 of us would have met. We would have met at the same hotel, and we would have spent time together. And we didn't actually talk about writing or anything like that. We kind of just hung out, and we kind of more talk about our cultural differences. And it was quite nice. And mostly everybody was between 30 and 40 years old. So when we had to prepare for the ceremony, I think all of us was feeling a bit nervous, and at the same time I was like, well, I feel I should write something on a napkin, like a speech, just
acceptance speech.
Yeah, just in case. So I just had that there, and I just remember like it had all these people there. I don't know anybody. A lot of this is be like people coming up to you. You have no idea who they are. But they would have read your story and they would have heard of you. And well, when they call the name, I was like, hey, I'm a napkin right here. I'll make the speech. And it didn't really feel real at the time, because it says out of 5,000 to 6,000 entries, and you get a little bit of imposter syndrome, and you'd be like, well, I don't know if mine was really the best, like, you would think that. I still think that, but I'd be like, I'm not going to complain. If they thought it was so, if the head judge thought it was so and everybody else thought it was so, then that's how it was. So, but after that, a lot of doors opened for me.
So yeah, I'm definitely curious about that, and congrats on that win on behalf of the Caribbean and people everywhere and aspiring writers. And one of the things that stands out is your persistence in terms of entering these competitions. It's 2013, 2015, placing for the region, and then 2018 to win it. And I hope to get back to this idea of the doors that opened since you won that competition. But preparing for the interview, I read your story Passage is written in, what do we call it, Trini Creole?
Yeah, Trini Creole English, yeah.
And and totally enjoy it. Is not difficult for me to follow, and I imagine the judges having selected it, they were able to follow it easily. And I'm kind of curious because I do vlogging and whatnot, and I'm always wondering, why are we still, even after your win, writing these stories in Creole? You write the Repenters, Hungry Ghost probably reflects the same type of language. Why are we still having conversations about, does it make sense writing a story in Creole? Where that stems from, and because we win in competitions with it, so obviously it has a place.
I think it's how we treat language in school, especially primary school when growing up. I haven't been in the primary school system, obviously, for a long time, but I mean, we were dissuaded from writing in Trini Creole English. You could write the dialogue and so on, and even that wasn't so like it wasn't so coaxed into doing that. But they say talk proper, learn all these words, and I wouldn't say the reading material that we got was European or American or anything like that. But probably that the books that you had home was European and American, because the more widely available, they was probably cheaper than local books, and it's likely the ones that would have been passed down to you from your parents or your grandparents or your uncles, whatever. So your library might have been full of that. So as as you're small, you're raised with this kind of dichotomy in your head where your thoughts and your speech is in Trini Creole English, I assume for the majority of Trinidadians. But when you are writing, is almost strictly what we say standard English. So when it's time to actually write, like we say, like to write a story, I mean, we might write with WhatsApp messages or text messages or Facebook in Trini Creole English. But somehow when we come to write a short story or something like that, we think that it must reflect what we read in books. So you're trying to mimic what you read in books, and it's difficult to mimic it if you haven't read it all that much, because sometimes you want to write you as Y-O-U or Y-U-H, and you're not too sure how to write it, and sometimes you just get this inkling that it looks awkward on the page. It looks wrong because you never saw it that much. So I think part of it is exposure to it, under exposure. Not saying that it's not written and not there, just under exposure, because obviously there are plenty writers from decades ago who used Trini Creole English. It just probably wasn't exposed to it at a young age. In writing, I would say on the page. Seeing it on the page is something different than hearing somebody talk about it on radio or hearing somebody talk about it in TV. And maybe we even get slightly apologetic when we write it. Be like, well, we're not sure if people would understand it when they read it. So that's an interesting discussion to have, because, yeah, we do have that split when it comes to seeing it on the page and, hearing it, where it seems a lot more natural.
As you write your stories in Creole, and these award-winning stories and these books that they have up for publication, what some of the considerations that you're still making in the background that you wanted to have some sort of universal appeal?
Well, when it just comes to the story, I just think, well, all characters have to desire something. Everybody wants something in a life. In Passage, this man just wanted to climb this mountain. He wanted to, prove he still had some youth in him. He still had it in him. And there's a feeling that probably me and you could relate to as we get a little older. But all characters have to desire something. And that's usually the very, very first thing. Now, when it comes to using Trini Creole English, people have spoken to me about this already. I don't aim to sound 100% accurate. I don't aim to 100% emulate the Trini Creole English. I like to put a little flourish and a little poetry to it. And sometimes people may not speak naturally as how I write it. But, that's just how I figure it in my style, because maybe the person's thought process is going through it like that. I don't think you would really read like one of my stories to learn exactly how we speak. So maybe that's how I measure it out in my head. There's also the fact that if you know what a Trini accent sounds like, and let me say somebody write you in a dialogue, like you doing this, a person might read it as you're doing this instead of so I just write YOU, but I tend to put or what is called in literature elisions, and elisions is like when sometimes they cut out the G's. So like if I say doing, DOING, I would just put DOIN, doing. And you don't need the apostrophe because the apostrophe is just look like clutter or like running, RUNNIN. And it just comes off looking.
Thank you.
You know?
Thank you so much
Yeah.
for that, because I remember writing a story once and I'm using the apostrophes to signify the missing letters. And then after a while, there's this Chinese guy talking and I was like, no, this sentence looks like rubbish with all these apostrophes. And I endorse that point that you make there in terms of, you know, having you're writing your story. There's really no need to misspell the words. The person will make certain considerations. The reader makes certain considerations as they go along. And your familiarity with the Caribbean or the Trinidadian language. Just out of curiosity, Portia, your writing, what's your thoughts on Creole and what tends to be your structure in terms of writing stories?
Oh, well, with my structure, I used to do both. So I would it depends on the person, or it depends on who's narrating. So I had a story where it's a first person, you know, this person is coming to work on an Ash Wednesday and it's in Port of Spain and nobody wants to come to work in town on an Ash Wednesday. And I kept the whole thing like Creole because it was a kind of pace as well and a rhythm of it. You're hustling and the whole place smelling like pee. It have like some people still sleeping on the road and things, which is something I experienced when I was working in town. So I thought like the pacing of it needed that Creole dialect, or local dialect. And sometimes if it's like a kind of, so that to me is like more comedic. And it's more fun. But like if it was something a little more serious, I would keep it I would probably keep it like standard English, and like what Kevin said, have like some poetry in the writing of it, but like I would keep the Creole within dialogue. It just like, for me, it's like tone and what you're trying to communicate, even a theme or something. That is what sort of influences how you do the writing. Yeah.
Thank you. And I've heard both of you all say it, and I'm curious about it to learn more for myself here. So this question is for me. Tell me a little bit more about this poetry in writing, because we're talking about prose here, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what's poetry in writing prose?
You go first.
I want to know about this.
Poetry and writing prose is okay. So to give a lead into an example here, let me say that you meet somebody at the house or let me say at the bar, and they telling you a story, and they wouldn't just say, let me say, Michael, do this or do that. They would put it in a way that you're able to fully visualize this, this thing. And I'll give you a very stark example here, because this is the only thing that really come into my mind. And I would say that Trinidadians naturally poetic in sometimes the darkest ways. Sometimes people would pass around these WhatsApp videos, and yes, try your best to avoid it. So sometimes you open it and be like, why is him with this boy? But it was it had a car accident where this man, he is fixing his car, and this other man hit him, and his half his body was hanging out like where the wheel was, and his head was in there. You didn't see the head or anything like that. So right before I turned off the video, it had this man like he watching so to see how the man was, and he's like, boy, that man head just like scrambled egg in there, boy, and it's like, well, okay, but that's the imagery that come to his mind. So, I mean, in the darkest way I could think about, I mean, that is what that's metaphor, and That's what poetry is. And if you write stuff like that in prose and you really think about how people describe things, and really you could pick it up from just listening to people talk, especially older folk. You will see that there's a way in which they describe things. But to me, I also like to mix it with what I would say is like classical books that I've written. That I've wrote. No, sorry. that I've read.
You're writing some real classics,
I write no classical books so, that I've read, and the older literature used to rely on a lot of vivid imagery and so on. And I like to incorporate that when talking about Trinidad, because there's a way to describe what I would call the ecology of Trinidad and the aesthetic, the cultural aesthetic of not just like the nature, but the people. And sometimes you have to rely on using a bit like a lot of metaphor and alliteration or assonance or whatever other literary devices to really get that across. But just like our accents, I say we have a very poetic way of speaking.
How can an aspiring writer that's looking for a traditional publisher, how can they invest in themselves? What are the things that they need to be doing to get better?
Well, first of all, I would say don't jump into it. One time, like don't jump into trying to get something published one time. Once you have something published, it out there, it is really no longer yours. I mean, it's in your name and everything like that, but it out there, you can't change it. I mean, you could probably release a second edition, but you can't change it. It's out there for bad and for good. I would say, and sometimes ideas not fully formed when you write it down. Sometimes you have to give it a few months, sometimes even a few years. It had to probably go through 2-3 rounds of editing. So I do come across a lot of people who kind of desperate. As I was, I do come across people who are desperate to be published. And sometimes it's just not the right time, because writing is one of the, I say, the careers you don't really have a shelf life. You could do it at any age. It's not like when you sometimes if you're a singer performer, you might have most of the people at a certain young age, but writing, you could do it at any age. And you could take your time with it. It's not running away. But what I would say to somebody doing it is that write for yourself first, which means just enjoy the thing. Because when you get to the point of publishing, it starts to get incredibly stressful. And that's where you start to get to the dark side of it. That part there, even as good as publishing sound, you mightn't enjoy it because you have umpteen people coming to tell you to change things, and you have to fight to say, hey, I don't want to change that. And if you're not already kind of fully formed as a writer, if you're not confident in your writing, you might make decisions that you don't want to make. So I would say have a body of work already. Not a huge body of work, but have a body of work that you're comfortable with. Let a year pass, read back some of that body of work, and if you're not cringing or you're not embarrassed by it, that means you're still okay with it. Read a lot. When you read a lot, you expose yourself to different ideas, not just fiction, but non-fiction. Plenty different articles. You get various ideas. Talk to people. Listen to people talk. When you listen, even if you had to eavesdrop, the people. You have all these things that you could use as material to improve yourself. What I would advise against is, and I know this might seem controversial, but like if you're writing and you say you're publishing it online all the time, sometimes that might not be the best thing, because once it's published online, it counts as published already. Especially if you can't take it down. So if you're submitting it to somebody for free and they publishing it on their website, it counts as published and you will get paid. So if it's like your blog or something and you could easily take it down, Like that's fine because you could take it down. Because as I say, everybody's want exclusive content. Nobody wants something in the magazine or the anthology that somebody could just Google up and find on somebody else's website. But a lot of people, I know, they rush to see the stuff in print or they rush to see the stuff even online, you know. And they tend to do that. So I would advise not to do that because you will lose money in the end. And as your writing is an investment, your career as a writer is a very long investment. Have it be part of your life. Have it be part of your natural life. So even if you fall, even if you try and you fail and you get rejected so much times, it's just a part of your life. And if you love to do it, it wouldn't really faze you too much.
So I'm a young writer with a body of work that I've kept private. I'm not cringing when I read the work. Let's go back to the process of finding a literary agent, because that comes up quite often among the treaties in terms of I don't even know where to turn my attention to, where to look, how to make contact with these people. Tell me a little bit about that process.
Right. Well, how I got mine is a little unorthodox. I can't tell you go and win a big global prize and you'll get one. Fortunately, it have easier methods to doing it. I just didn't know it at the time. I mean, when I won the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, I had 3 agents email me, and it was kind of like my pick, not really, but end up just going with the one that I was totally sure of. But there are cases where somebody wrote a manuscript. There's somebody with my agency, Sherry Jones. She from Barbados, and she wrote a book. The book is called How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House. It got pretty big, but she didn't have an agent at the time. So what my agency, Aitken Alexander Associates, that's in the UK. What they do is that sometimes in fact, right now they actually accepting new clients. So from their website, I mean, they might take a few months to get back to you. I mean, but they will have a list of agents, and each agent would have a profile, and they'd be like, well, we like this type of book, we like this type of book. Well, the agency I'm with only likes literary fiction. So if you write horror or action or something like that, they mightn't take that, but they will have other agencies that will take that. So, but certain agents, I mean, the agent had to be excited about your book. If they're not excited, it makes sense to go with them because them had to sell your book. And them had to make money from selling your book. So if they're excited, they're not gonna bother. So so you can submit it through some agencies' websites. They might ask for first 3 chapters, first 10,000 words. If it's fiction, if it's poetry, they might ask for like 10 poems or something like that of a collection. But you can submit it, and usually submit it to either them or they would have a assistant if the client list is a little big. And I assume that they would give you a time frame, usually within 2 to 3 months. They would get back to you and say, well, yeah, this is something we could definitely work with, or sorry, the work is not really right for us. And it's not really to take that personally, because you wouldn't want somebody to take your work if it's not right for them. They're not going to sell it. They're just going to leave it there on the desk. So you could try this with multiple agents and multiple agencies, because I mean we have the internet now. I mean back then, you say back with we say the early 2000s and things. I mean we had internet, but not all these things was online. So you probably had to go to America or go to the UK and do a MFA and actually physically meet people there. But mostly now communication could happen through WhatsApp and Zoom and email, and absolutely nobody, I think, has a problem with doing communication like that. You save a lot of money, you save a lot of time.
So when you think back to 2012, 2013, the story has kind of completely changed in terms of how you could communicate, reach out, and you have better opportunities now.
Yeah, you have better opportunities now, yeah. And maybe the opportunities was there before, like since 2012, but it had the information that if you was to ask anybody people might either be really secretive or they would just plain wouldn't know. But now, years later, we have more people who have traditional publishing contracts, and they're a little more loose-lipped about it, because the more books we have, like we say, from the Caribbean, is the better for Caribbean writers, because we would have if those books sell well, then we have a higher demand. Then they need more authors. Then they need more books, and it's a business.
And at the point where these 3 agents, after winning the Commonwealth Short Story Prize, they reach out to you, is it that you already had Hungry Ghost written, or they commissioning you that, hey, we want you to write, your next book belongs to us?
All right, so there's where probably a little bubble will happen with me, right? All right, so most agents wouldn't take you unless you have a finished book, because they're not going to take you so much on the promise of a book, because once you sign, you sign. And you want to sign a dud, like somebody who just dared sitting on a hand, right? I told one of them, well, I had the book, and I didn't have nothing. So he's like, well, send me He said, yeah, no, well, that's what happened. He's like, well, send me something. So I say, well, this man asked for something. I was like, I just want to sign a dotted line, So I went and I write 10,000 words within a few days. And I was like, this part of it, this part of the book here, typically a book might be 70,000 to 100,000 or so, maybe more, but that's the typical length of a book, of a novel, I would say. So I write 10,000 real fast, kind of Vikey kind of thing, and I send it to him, and he was like, hey, this song is real good. So we signed. He's like, well, when I can have the rest of the book? So I say, well, I feel I had to rework parts of it. So, but I already signed, so I had the time, and so I send him a little bit at a time, and well, it has something else that happened, but I could talk about that like a little later. But that so it wasn't commissioned or anything like that. I mean, when you're doing a traditional contract, I mean, you come up with you write a new one thing, and you part in your mind, you want it to be artistic and aesthetic, and you want it to be culturally relevant, but it had to be commercial too. I mean, it had to sell. People had to read it. So that's how that worked.
And this is in 2018, signing the dotted line for the book that is going to be released now in February 2023.
Well, not for the book, but for the just the agent-client relationship.
And was your responsibility to them as a writer? Is it that they would? Because I just trying to ask you these questions because I want to build in the mind of the aspiring writer what their world would look like when they come under a traditional publisher, right? So what is some of the things that you would say that when you're signing that dotted line, these are some of the things that you should look out for? This is whether it is fair price, whatever factors it may be, and then what sort of responsibility you have. Like I'm thinking about movies, and they might say, well, Hugh Jackman's sign up for Wolverine and he committing to 3 movies.
Yeah.
What does that relationship look like?
Right. So when it comes to like the agent-client relationship, you have to think as them working for you. I mean, I'm not working for them. Like they if I give them something, they make money by selling my thing. They will get it depends on the agency. They might get a 10 to 15% cut or whatever advance that they would get. They don't get that unless they sell it. So in the sense now, I don't really have an obligation to them when I'm ready to have a book. Because remember, it's not just me who with my agent. They might have 10, 15 other people, so they constantly have to be, selling things. So when I don't really have an obligation to my agent. My obligation is really just to ensure that I deliver when the I just waiting for the dogs to finish. Yeah. I also just regaining my train of thought.
That's fine.
Yeah. Right. So when I was
There's
okay.
a get to record and we hear it down back in the background.
That's okay. That's okay. I did end up losing my train of thought, but in the end, I was saying that I do have an obligation to them. Same way, in a sense, they don't really have an obligation to me except to give me my advance. But as I say, is a not really a top-down relationship or anything like that. Is a business relationship. Like both of us had to work together for both of us to kind of get through with the thing. So when it comes to what was the original question? The original question was what was the original? Yeah, I trying to remember the original.
No, it's like kind of like the. All right, I getting back my train of thought here, right? It's about the relationship that you have with the publisher and the responsibility that you have to them, whether it's they expect 3 books out of you. Right. You know.
Right, so I should note here that the agency and the publisher is 2 different entities. The agency is you are with them contractually, which means that I cannot go to our next agency or next agent if, let me say, I send a book with my agent for him to sell, and he can't sell it, or he sell it for too little bit of money. I can't just ups and go, hey, I go in, but I mean, I could terminate the contract and go by somebody else. But they are like my proxy to the publishers. Now, the publishers now would have, and this is actually by territory. So certain publishers would deal with certain territories. So Bloomsbury deals with the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth territory. So that, of course, that includes the Caribbean. That would include Australia, New Zealand, things like that. That is excluding Canada. My American publisher is Echo, and Echo is what you call an imprint of HarperCollins. So HarperCollins is with the North American territory. So they would be publishing the book in USA and Canada. So when there's translations, those are separate publishers as well. So, for example, there's an Arabic translation for it. I'm not too sure when that would come out, and that has a different publisher, but they would work with, one of the other publishers, and they are based in Egypt. So there's many different entities here. But when you sign, let me say, you sign a traditional publishing contract, there's different types of contracts. Let me say that you get a contract for X amount of dollars, right? And you might, but my contract was for this one book. They signed the deal, which means that they want this book, but they want me to maybe edit the book a little bit. They might want to change a few things in the book. And this is where you would have your little tennis match with them, because obviously you want the book to stay intact, but at the same time you want it to sell, but you also want it to be the best. And sometimes you reading your own work, you have a bias. And sometimes outside people reading your work, you could see, well, this might work better if we was to make this chapter a little longer, we was to shorten this, so the pacing might be better. And, in the end, I think, well, they deal with dozens, if not hundreds of books. And I only deal with 4 books, that I have, right? 4 books. So they have a better idea, especially of the commercial market, because again, there's a business, they want to sell books. But you had to make your voice stand. There's parts of the book that they wanted to take out, and they had to be very, very convincing. You had to write whole essays about why this should stay in, and so eventually there's like, oh, we understand now. Yeah, that should definitely stay. So you had to be persuasive as well, because in a sense, once you sign that thing and you deliver that promise of the final manuscript to them, I mean, it don't really belong to you again. I mean, it's your book, but they have the distribution rights and so on. So you would you'd usually get paid in multiple multiple amounts, which means that you get paid upon signing the promise of the book, which means that you finish the first draft or the whatever. And they say you need to do this and this and this. You get paid for delivering the final manuscript. That's after working with maybe 2 editors or so that had to pass through, and that would be months later. And you would have a deadline for that as well. My deadline wasn't too bad at all. I had about 5 months or so to fix it up, and I finished that, much before that. You get paid upon publication of the book, hardcover, if you have a hardcover release. So that would be next month for me, February. And you get paid upon paperback release, which typically happens a few months after or a year after. So whatever advance that they get, so the advance is the money that they pay you up front. That this is just the cost of, this is just them buying the book from you. Now, at the same time, now you would sign for royalties. Royalties could be between 10 and 15%, which means every copy of the book that they sell, you get 10 or 15% of the sales. Because remember, most of the burden being on them, so they get to keep 80 to 90%. The thing with self-publishing is that you get to keep 100% of it, but you mightn't sell as much, and then you have to do the heavy lifting and transportation and distribution yourself. So you're kind of paying your own salary in a way. So that's basically how it's worked. Now there are some contracts where they would pay you for 2 books. But you'd be like, well, wait now, when you write 1 book, all you're paying me for 2 books. Well, you wouldn't get your full payment. You would get your payment for the first book upon delivery. And then when you write that second book, they would give you a timeline to write that. That sounds very terrifying. So a good thing I didn't get that kind of contract. But understand that will help you. That will help make you work. If you have a deadline, you have to deliver this thing to get your money. So you have to write, let me say that they give you a 2-year deadline or something like that, where you have to deliver a second book to be in 2 years. And upon delivery, you'd get your second half or the last amount of your money or whatever. So there's contracts like that as well, where you have a 2-book deal, and like Prince Harry have his 4-book deal or something like that. So he wouldn't get all the money until he deliver 4 books, So that's when you hear about things like that, that's what that means. So you get it paid upon delivery, and it's for a certain amount of time with deadlines.
And you have a 1-book deal.
Yeah.
Your Hungry Ghost is coming out in February 2023 here. So is it that you will actively be looking for a book deal? Like, what was your responsibility as to yourself and your family from a financial point of view? You're on the market looking for work actively, and all agents will be approaching you. I think the question that I really want to get to here is, you're an award-winning writer. You have books published by traditional publishers. In Trinidad and Tobago, currently, please tell me, are you a full-time writer?
Yeah, I'm a full-time writer right now. But I haven't been so for very long, though. I've only been so, I would say, for like a year and something now. But I've been writing for much, much, much longer than that.
And it's fantastic because I was looking at some interview that you did with Moko Magazine, I think it was. And back then you called it hobby work. Yeah. Where you have a part-time job as a biology teacher and whatnot. So to hear that you've accomplished that. And how do you sustain moving forward being a full-time writer? Is it that, what do you have to do every year? Do you have to publish a book yearly, every 2 years to be able to sustain your lifestyle as a full-time writer?
Okay, so that's a good, but let me make one correction. So as a full-time biology teacher, but so which means I was doing my job full-time and doing this in but I would say is my spare time. Anytime again, school, I just writing down stuff in.
Oh wait, you're still doing biology teaching?
No. At the time, I was full-time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. A lot of writing I used to do like on the weekends or on the night. How do I sustain myself? Well, this is where you have to fight for like a good advance, because you don't know like what but like with any let me say private contractual work, you don't know when the next one gonna come. So you want to make the most of what you had there. So what you talk about if you had to publish a book every year or anything like that. But it's really quality over quantity. Because if I write, let me say 10 books and I publish one book per year, you kind of, unless those 10 books selling, real good each time, it probably don't come off as looking good if I write 10 books and I release one each year and it's selling 20 copies. You know what I mean? So it's probably best for me to focus on writing something that I know that will sell well, and I guess you need to have a kind of commercial mind for that in a way. Not chasing trends, because sometimes you chase a trend and by the time you finish the book, the trend done. But you can observe like styles of work that are more commercial, and I wouldn't say mimic it, but you could make the conflict and theme of your writing somewhat match that, and without compromising your artistic self or your aesthetic self. Now, money wouldn't just come through book contracts. So typically, anybody want to publish an excerpt, they are the payer. Or you make sure you get paid, If somebody want to feature you somewhere, sometimes they might pay. The translations also pay. You can submit stories to not like a whole book, but you can submit stories to magazines and anthologies, and you get paid for that as well. And typically those opportunities are unlimited once you find the right ones, because they will always have those there. Whether or not they'll take it is not unlimited, but the opportunities for it are.
So it's not as straightforward as the newspaper publishing an excerpt from a book, or even interviews like this one that we're doing here. It is a avenue that a writer could consider making money from.
It is. It wouldn't amount to be, of course, let me say, full living wages for a whole year, but it would help you out in the.
You could pay a Netflix bill.
You could pay, yeah. You could pay a gas money.
What sort of reception do you get in Trinidad in terms of when you present yourself as, I'm a writer, I could have speaking engagements with your schools, your students. What type of response and support you're getting from the local community in that sense?
So first of all, I don't charge to speak in schools or anything. I don't really believe in doing that. The last time I did a lot of school visits was when I think it was organized with the Ministry of Education, and they would have organized that through a Canadian group called Code, and they ran something called the Bird Code Award for Young Adult Literature. The prize is defunct now, but when we did it, we had this big 3 writers from the Caribbean. And the prizes that you get, you get to pick a Caribbean publisher, because it was really to stimulate Caribbean publishing. And they would do an initial run of 2,500 copies, and you get in libraries and schools, and they organize a tour. So we would go to different schools and speak with students. And that was mostly a very good experience. There was some schools, I can name the schools, but had some schools that it wasn't well organized at all, but mostly it was good. There's one particular school that actually uses one of my books in their classes, and every year they call me and to show me that sometimes the students do character portraits, or this year they did like little Lego sets. And they made scenes from the book, the Bisa Kukuyo. And, they invited me to speak to the students, and, you'd have Q&A and things.
And I think it's important to say this. Am I correct that it is maple leaf you're talking about?
Yeah.
And that's something to take a note of, right?
It's only really after the Commonwealth Short Story Prize thing, I would get engagements. So even if you try to do stuff locally, and you say that you're homebred and all kind of things like that, they won't really take you on unless somebody from England say, hey, look out for this person, this person upcoming. And then Trinidad, I'm not gonna say all of Trinidad, right? I'm not gonna say all. A good bit, I would say, of the general public might be like, hey, them looking out for he. Let me see what he up to. But I'm not gonna say all of Trinidad is because I would say there have been people in the literature circle that have looked out for me. Whether it's through longevity or whether it's through luck, you have people to hear that in the literature scene that would say, hey, this person is probably an investment that we could look out for them and see, they might end up with a contract one day, and then we could invite them to the literature festival, and they would be more than happy to, because we invested in you from years before. So, but generally, I would say if you were people to take you on, and it's very, very sad to say this, you had to, if you imagine a fishing line, you had to make that fishing line real long to catch a big fish in America or the UK or somewhere else, because only then people would be like, yeah, that's impressive, we should. Yeah.
But you see, to be fair, and Portia, you could chime in here too. As a writer, what would be part of my expect? Like if somebody was to come up to me and say, Lyndon, you've been writing these books, or Kevin, you've been writing these books. What some things that you would like in place? Does it translate only to book sales? What does looking out look like?
Well, looking out to me is like, well, whenever we had the Bocas Literature Festival, in one way or the other, they used to try to involve me, whether through relevance or not. But like it had 1 year, they commissioned a story for me about the bookman, kind of folkloric kind of story, and that to me would be like looking out in a very small way. So they'll be like, they'll give you opportunity to showcase your writing. If they have like a series of readings on a certain theme, they might invite you, and they actually do pay you for all these things. So it's not just to benefit them. That to me is what I would say is looking out, which means that if one see opportunity come up, they might recommend you for the opportunity, or they might send you an email. But probably you could check this out and see that. But if you don't really have anybody doing that for you, you have to kind of expend all that energy doing that yourself. And not everybody might be savvy or have friends that might be savvy to help them find these opportunities.
Any thoughts that you want to share, Portia?
Well,
along even your experience as a writer, an artist, and people looking out for you, and what you think could be in place. I mean, it's not a conversation I plan to have, but if there's anything that stands out in your experience.
Well, I guess from observing with Kevin, there would be two, bookstores that I think are looking out for him, because that would be paper-based and Metropolitan Book, because they would always let him know, could we get this back in restock, or and meet him in Chaguanas, because they are based in town. And to me, that is a thing. They come in Chaguanas and they meet him. I think Metropolitan Books did that, and he would give the books and they would have it on his shelf. And to me, promotion of the book as a local bookstore is a big deal. And the big commercial ones with a lot of branches, they might not do that so much. Right. And I think it's great when we have those specialized books and bookstores, and more of them are coming, I think another way of looking out is word of mouth, because I think when Little Town Secrets came out, I had a couple copies, and some of my friends were teaching English in foreign countries, and they were actually using it to teach and using it for as a cultural thing with Trinidad as well. So one of my friends would have been teaching in Nicaragua and Colombia, and she used it, and just getting familiar with his name and with Trinidad, that looking out for all the writers, because now they probably want to expand their English skills and get some more Trinidadian books and things like that. So all of that is, you have your friends, you have people who appreciate your work and they want to do like go the extra mile for you. So I think all of that is looking out.
Yeah, thanks very much for sharing that. That's very inspiring listening to it. And you know, I think I have responsibility, and that's what even this podcast is about. In whatever small way I could look out and have these interesting conversations and highlight the work that you're all doing. So thank you. Is there, by chance, and this has been going on for a little while now, is there anything that we haven't talked about in terms of traditional publishing experience? I want to remind folks that I didn't say it at all, but in the show notes, you will find links to different books that Kevin has and any different work that Portia has in terms of her art that you want to highlight. I will put the links in the show notes down below. So look out for that. And I strongly recommend, I encourage you to read Passage, which is the 2018 Commonwealth Short Story Prize winner. So tell us what's happening in February beyond where we could find you, where you like to connect with people and engage with people who might be looking for a speaker at the next event. Tell us what's upcoming and where we could find you.
Right. Well, Hungry Ghosts, there's two different publication dates because I say it's different territories. So in North America, it's actually coming out before it will be here. So people in Canada and USA will have it in the hand before we have it. But that's not in a small thing. So that's coming out on February 7th. And we will have it here by February 16th. So that'll be in the UK and Commonwealth regions. And, well, you know, I have a few jet setting to do because I have to do some promotion in the UK. I have a few events there. That wouldn't be for very long. As we come back, there should be some events. I can't say in stone because we still ironing out details for it. You should definitely look out for the Bocas Literature Festival. I mean, I would definitely be a part of it. And in terms of, like, say if you was to, like, social media or anything like that, I'm not really big on social. I'm not like Lyndon. So I'm not a big charismatic influencer or anything like that. I just post from time to time, you know, sometimes I post about the book, sometimes I post my little cats in the
yeah, I see them cats lunging somewhere. I see them cats somewhere
that's like really
double decker bed or something, boy.
I'm not really a big social media person otherwise. But if feel free to send me a message if you have any questions. I do like to help people who have something that they feel that they have something on their hands and they probably want a little advice or to be steered in a certain direction. I'm happy to help. I can't sell your book or anything like that. I just telling you, I probably can't help you find a particular agent because I don't know which agent would be best for you. I wouldn't know that, but I could help steer you in the right directions, at least to give you the advice that that you might need to take it to the next level.
So in mid-February, your book will be available for sale in Trinidad.
Yes,
at Paper Beast.
At Paper Beast, and hopefully all the other major booksellers, right?
If you don't have his book, is not a major bookseller.
Yeah, available because it's saying available at available at major booksellers. So assuming if you don't have the book, it's not a major bookseller.
All right, I like how that's song.
That's what they say. Available at major booksellers. So
here's what we'll do. For who I would like to get a copy of the Hungry Ghost autographed, right?
Yeah.
And whoever reaches to the end of this podcast episode and hearing this message, and if you are the first person to message me on Instagram, I have for you an autographed copy of Kevin's new book. This will be after February, of course, the 16th around there. Is a book that will be autographed. Of course, I am purchasing it and giving it out as a gift to you. So if you reach to the end of this podcast episode, send me a message on Instagram, let me know. I reached the end of the episode with Kevin Jared Hosein and his wife, Portia Subran. And I have a copy of The Hungry Ghost for you. So Kevin and Portia, Thank you very much. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I know I will enjoy editing it and listening back to it because you all have so freely shared the wealth of the information and the experience. So congrats again.
Thank you, and thank you for having us.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yes, you're welcome. Thanks.